Have you ever prepped for a donor meeting? In fact, almost to the degree where you have rehearsed word for word what you're going to say in that initial meeting. And then when you get there and you sit down with the donor, the conversation goes in a completely different direction and you're stuck. You're not prepared. You're not sure what to say or what to do. Well, in this episode, I am going to help you with that. We're not talking about me giving you a script, but we're talking about giving you language that you can actually use without compromising who you are at your core. That is our focus on this episode. Let's huddle up. Hey, welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Mark, the Fund Coach. I'm Mark Duncan, and this is a topic that I haven't really talked very much about, but it is very common, especially with folks that I work with in my private coaching, as they struggle with this whole idea of what to do, what to say on that first visit. And so one of the first things I want to talk about is most importantly, your mindset, right? When you go into something with a degree of anxiety or concern, then that is likely what will play out when you actually meet with them. And so, one of the things that you have to think about, first of all, is that the person that you're meeting with is a human being, just like you. They are no different. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They wake up in the morning, they pour coffee, they brush their teeth, they do all the things that we do every single day. The only difference is that these are people with capacity and they can have a profound and positive impact on your organization's mission through their philanthropy. And so we have to understand that, they're human beings. This is not Shark Tank. This is not a pitch competition. You're not pitching them for a gift. In fact, that is a term that I absolutely despise when it comes to relationship fundraising because you're not pitching, right? You're ultimately going to be soliciting. And on this first visit, you're not even going to be doing that, right? This is about making that connection. This is not a performance. This is an opportunity to engage in meaningful conversations. You want to explore where there may be alignment as it relates to their interests and passion and what you do as an organization. And hopefully, you've done a little bit of research on that, especially if they are already a donor, right? That already tells you that there's interest there, right? Criteria for meeting with somebody. I always talk about this. I'll repeat it over and over again. Link, interest, and ability. A link to your mission. That could be through them being a donor or having some connection to your organization, or they've been introduced to you by somebody who is connected to your organization. Interest. They have some interest in your mission. If they're a donor, there's interest there. Your job is to discern what that is and how strong that is and how to make it even stronger, right? And then finally, ability, and that's their capacity to be able to give at a major gift or transformational gift level. And that can be done through wealth screening. So, what you're trying to do, in addition to engage in meaningful conversation and see where there is alignment, but you also are making sure that you are engaging in relationship deepening conversations. You want those moments, those aha moments that let you know that you are getting closer to this person in terms of understanding what's important to them about what you do, right? So it's really important that when you engage in these conversations, that it's more about listening than it is about you talking. Really, really critical. You want to keep it relational. You want to keep it simple. And you want to make sure that you look for those natural openings in the conversation so that you can make those transitions if you need to. You may be looking to say things like, I'm really grateful you took time to meet with me, right? These are the transitions you make from the small talk, right? Because small talk always happens when you meet with someone, right? Initially, you arrive someplace, you may talk about the traffic, you may talk about, how your morning was or afternoon was or anything along those lines. And you don't want that to go on too long, but you want to look for an opening to make that transition into why they're meeting, because you want to be respectful of their time. So looking for opportunities to say, I'm grateful that you took time to meet with me. I'd love to hear from you about what's most important and what's most meaningful about why you support this work, why you support this mission, right? And that's when you're going to listen very intently for things that are important to them that you can lean into as you build this relationship. You may ask them what first connected you to our mission, what made you give, or what encouraged you to meet with me based on who you were introduced to me by, whatever that may be. Make that transition, make that connection, get them talking, get them talking about themselves, get them talking about your mission, and be sure that you listen. Listening is absolutely critical, right? Because you want to make sure that you're capturing everything possible. Now, one of the things that I often hear about is how do do I take notes? Do I record the meeting? No, you're not going to record the meeting. Taking notes, yes. But here's something I'm going to say about taking notes. And this is directed at those who have a tendency to take notes on some sort of device, whether that is a tablet or a smartphone. I would advise you not to use either of those tools to take notes. I would suggest that you go old school and use an old fashioned notebook, right? And just let them know you're taking some notes. Now, if you have a laptop, um, I still would discourage you using a laptop. You see, the electronics, especially a laptop, can serve as a barrier between you and that person. And one thing about electronics is you can say you're taking notes, but it could be, looked at as if you are texting somebody or even scrolling through social media. So using an old school pen and notebook or pen and paper is going to be the way to go. And it is okay for you to jot down those things that you're taking away from this conversation that you want to be able to retain later. So as you transition into sort of deeper conversation, you might be looking to share some things about the organization now. So, in other words, they may say, I really like something specific. Now you can ask for permission. Well, I'd love to share with you some things about what we're doing now in that regard. Or there's an opportunity I'd love to explore with you. And that, again, it's an opportunity to bring them closer. So, you're going to be doing this, right, for a period of time. This isn't just about the first visit, because the only objective that you have on the first visit, there's really two. One is the research that you have engaged in to identify this person as somebody who meets the criteria of link, interest, and ability? Is this something you can somewhat confirm? And you may not be able to confirm the capacity aspect of it, but the interest piece you can confirm, and you're going to get a chance to understand the person and how to connect with them. That's going to be super critical, right? You want to make sure that there's some level of synergy there between the two of you so that the conversation is flowing relatively easy. It is your first visit. It's not going to be smooth all the way through. You want to, see if there is, an opportunity to connect further And also, you want to make sure that you have an opportunity for a follow up visit. This is one of the things that also I always have to remind people when you leave a meeting or you're wrapping up an initial visit with a donor, schedule the next visit while you're there. I can't express that enough. Many organizations, many nonprofit leaders will wrap up the meeting. Oh, well, let's talk next, next time. Let's talk in a couple weeks, or let's talk next month, or we sort of leave it hanging when the opportunity to look at your calendars at the same time and to coordinate a date and time and location, or at least a date and time, is right there in front of you. Everybody has their calendars with them, whether they're on their phones or they actually have a paper calendar. They have it right in front of them. Most people don't leave home without it. And so seize that opportunity to see if they have availability at a time that suits them roughly. So if they say, "Oh, I'd love to get together in a couple of months," or "I'd love to invite you to our organization for a tour," which should be the next step. So the first meeting, by the way, should be in a neutral location, coffee shop, restaurant, somewhere that is relatively neutral, and both in terms of the location and also the distance that you have to travel. You want to try to meet them halfway. You should be going toward them than them coming toward you. So if you're going to meet at a neutral location, meet in a neutral location that is actually close to them geographically. And so they're not working so hard to get to you. And then if there is interest to continue learning about the organization through a visit or a tour, then you invite them to come. And that's the objective on the first visit. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that you are working toward an ask. And each conversation, each moment, each opportunity to connect, each opportunity to learn about who they are and what's important to them about what you do brings you closer to that ask. So use that opportunity to connect, use that opportunity to bring them closer to the mission, use that opportunity to ask qualifying questions about what they're learning more of as you bring them closer to the organization. Ask them if they're interested in learning more. Ask them if they have any questions. Ask them if there's anything that they've seen that stands out to them. They're going to tell you. They're likely going to tell you, and you want to pay very close attention to that. So, as you make this transition toward the ask, and that is going to be after a number of visits. Now, if you're asking me how many, there's no set amount. What I always tell people in terms of when you know it's time to ask, it's really only two things that you need to understand. One, that they have no more questions for you and you have nothing more to share with them about the thing that they're most interested in or about the thing that you're going to solicit them for. When you get to that point, that is when it's time to make that transition. And you may start asking questions or making statements like, based on what you shared, I think there may be a meaningful opportunity here. Or would you be open to hearing what a partnership or a deeper level could look like? Now, that doesn't always mean a gift. It could also mean volunteer opportunities. It could also mean inviting them to serve on your board if you have space and they meet the expectation from your perspective of a quality board member. These are all things that you can be thinking about and that you don't have to always know when you're going into the relationship. Okay. So these are some tips on some things that you can do to make it easy to connect. Oftentimes, especially when I'm working with private clients or as well working with people in my academy. There's often a difficulty getting the meeting. And then once the meeting is secured, what do we do? Now, getting the meeting can be a challenge as well, especially if you don't have all of the pertinent contact information. If you're just dealing with an email address, that's going to be a challenge. But if you have an email address and a phone number, especially a mobile number, that's going to be better. But in addition to that, if you have someone, a board member, or somebody that they know well and trust, and that you also know, that would be willing to make an introduction. And that introduction can be done via email or they can join you for what I call a tag team coffee. These are ways to get the meeting. But what I've just talked about are how do you navigate the very beginnings of this relationship and the conversations that you have so that it's natural, comfortable, and will lead to an easy solicitation. Because at the end of the day, that's what you are focused on. And sometimes your plan may not necessarily go the way that you thought because your donor or prospect may have some interests that you weren't planning to explore. And that could lead to a larger or more significant gift or more significant engagement long term. So remember this, that these individuals that you are connecting with, that you've identified that have been donors to your organization in a transactional way, and you finally get a meeting with them, please do not think about making the ask initially. Because then you're going to take what has been transactional and now you have made it even more transactional. And your objective is to make sure that you go from the transactional, right? You're trying to convert them from being a transactional giver into a relational donor who may make a transformational gift. This is a journey. And so, this initial meeting that you may be struggling with in terms of what to say and rehearsing a script and thinking that it's going to go that way, then you're going to be in for a huge surprise. Settle in, relax, understand that you're connecting with an individual who is just like you in many ways and building a trusting relationship with them on behalf of your organization that will ultimately lead to not only a meaningful, beautiful relationship, but also significant philanthropic support. And I should even say sustainable and significant philanthropic support for your mission. Because at the end of the day, this fundraising thing, it's not about the dollars. It's about what the dollars do for the people that you serve. I hope this has been helpful to you. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. Drop them below if you're watching them on YouTube. If you are getting notification about this podcast via email, feel free to respond to that email or simply send me an email at mark@thefundcoach.com. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.